That doesn't mean we're going to be there anytime soon, but we're getting close. So that, to me, that means I've prepared the next studies. And so what I want to do is I want you guys just kind of let me know what you'd be interested in, what you'd be comfortable in. There's two thoughts that I've had. I don't know if you'll be interested in them. Number one is a study guide on the spirit world. And then another one I've been thinking, but people get really skittish about this because they have all these preconceived ideas. But I was thinking about doing a whole study guide on the devil, the doctrine of Satan. Which is not taught in churches, but you kind of need to know your enemy and some of that. But did you notice how it got even more quiet when I said the doctrine of Satan? Oh my God. We don't want to talk about Slewfoot. So, and then we've been talking about maybe doing another Holy Ghost workshop. Many of you guys were not here for that. And what we do is we go through the gifts and manifestations of the Spirit, and then we also have hands-on services, and those have been really some fun times. So, if not, somebody suggested also the Book of Jashir.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is a lot. That's a lot of work. So I'm going to have a filler in between to do the Book of Jashir, because I need to take the Book of Jashir and I need to match it with the Old Testament and see where the pieces go.
That's not already in your brain.
I'm sorry. I hope your interruption wasn't bothering my conversation.
I'm shocked.
I was actually working on doing what I was going to call the Scholar's Bible, and taking Jashir and Enoch and putting it in a chronological order, so you get a whole different story. But some people will consider that heretical or blasphemous or whatever other religious words they want to come up with. But I think it would be neat just to have what the Jews know and believe and what we know in our Christianity, and putting the whole story together, since God is going to reconcile the Jews and Gentiles anyways. But that's a long, exhaustive work. That's probably about 6, 7, 8 months worth of study if I'm diligent on it. Right now I'm good. I get busy. Yeah. That's why you keep me locked up downstairs, right? Here's your gruel. Okay. So, and I'm working on 2 books right now. Anyway, so okay, give me some ideas. Yes.
How about a parallel one about the devil and like I've got one. It's got the New King James on one side and Message on the other. So one about the devil, and the other side would be like the authority that we have.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I said the doctrine of Satan, some of y'all choked on your Twinkies, man.
Yeah. I like that too. I really do, because he's more active in the end times, and we are very obviously in the end times, because you are seeing more activity. And since we do need to know our enemy and his tactics, and really be trained in that area, because the church doesn't train you in that area.
What about, if we're going to go that route, what about like devils and deliverance and exorcisms and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anybody?
You know you'll start seeing them if you start teaching on that.
Don't tell me. Thank you.
You'll be delivered. It's true.
My little piggies went to market and they never came back now. Thanks for doing that. Okay, so
Hey, we see them at church?
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I see dead people
it's
too.
the end times. I'm sorry.
End times?
Yeah, it's the end times. You're probably going to run into them anyway. You might as well know what to do.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more. Some of the websites that I go to, and they're not aluminum foil websites, but there's been an increase in demonic activity, and some have actually associated it with some of it having to do with CERN, of some. Not only just demonic activity, but occult activity. Satanism is back on the rise. I've also got a teaching that I can do on the occult or Satanism. I don't know if you know, if anybody's been keeping up in different news things. Did anybody see the blood moon?
Mm-hmm.
In Iowa, there was a massive number of children became missing, Iowa or Idaho, because of the blood moon. As we're getting closer to the blood moon, anytime you get close to a satanic holiday, the spring equinox, the fall equinox, different equinoxes and different satanic holidays, there's going to be an increase in abductions in children and animals, cats and dogs for sacrifices. I don't know if you know that, but you can always see an increase during that time. So as we entered into the summer months, there was an increase of children missing. They just had the blood moon that was very prevalent. It lasted for over 52 minutes, which was one of the longest ones that ever did. And there was an increase in child abductions and missing children in some of the more cornfield states. Okay, so if you're from a cornfield state, you know what I'm talking about. So we was also thinking about doing an introduction to the occult, but I don't want people to think, oh my God, they went from fallen angels to Satan. What's next? You know, what about a Holy Ghost workshop?
Yes.
Okay. All right, give me some more ideas. Yes.
I would love to learn more about this. More about the I guess I would say the Hebrew side of the Bible.
The Hebrew side, the Hebraic side. Yep.
Basically, learn more about.
The only problem with that is that when you start talking about the Hebraic side or the Hebrew side, is people start getting into the Messianic Juice stuff.
I mean, like the wording, the language.
About what?
The language.
The language?
I mean, how it structure things.
How it got put together?
No.
The translation, I guess. He wants.
From the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's easily done. There was a council of 70 men that got together. They took the original scrolls, and they were commissioned to put together a Bible. King James, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. King James is the one who commissioned them to put together the Bible, and then I think it was Anne Boleyn. She became a Protestant, and she fought Mary, Queen of Scots, against it, because Mary, Queen of Scots, was a Catholic, and so she started beheading all of the Protestants. And so Anne Boleyn, who was also beheaded, the greatest work that she did was she commissioned the work of what we have now called the Protestant Bible. But what they translated from the Hebrew, into English and so forth, was done by that council back during the medieval times, during King James. And then we found in the 1940s, we found the Dead Sea, in the caves of Qumran in the Dead Sea area. A little shepherd boy threw a rock into a cave, and he heard something break and shatter, and it was these big old urns, and they had scrolls in them. And from that, we got like the book of Isaiah and the other stuff, which confirmed our translation in the authorized King James text. So that's how that came about. The problem with that, though, is this is what I'm a stickler for, and I even have this in the book that I'm writing. Is you have your Hebrew, what's called the Masoretic text, and then you have your ancient Hebrew. And sometimes your Masoretic text, which is more up-to-date Hebrew, does not say the same thing as the ancient Hebrew. So in my encyclopedia that I'm writing, I'm giving you the Masoretic text, but I'm also giving you the ancient, because you get a lot of information by knowing the word, what's called the etymology of the word, if you know the word. For example, I was studying this morning because I couldn't sleep on Nimrod. There's several theories about Nimrod, that he became a giant, he was a giant, or how did he become a giant. And when you read it, it says he began to be a mighty hunter in the land. Well, if you go to Septuagint and you read Genesis 10 about Nimrod, 10:4, it says that he was a giant hunter. So does that mean he was a giant who hunted men, or he was a man who hunted giants? And so you have to go back to the original text. And so people are asking the question, what happened to Nimrod? Did he become a giant, or was he born a giant? How did that happen? And then you got to go back to the different theories that are out there as far as, was there another angelic incursion after the first set of angels? Somebody said that maybe somebody survived the flood. Somebody said that maybe Nimrod had used a sorcery, black magic. But if you study Nimrod's lineage, his father was Cush, whose father was Shem, who's one of the sons of Noah. Yeah. And so, was it a polluted bloodline, or did one of the angels appear again as an angelic incursion, pollute that bloodline? Did Nimrod use sorcery? My thing is, Nimrod is always compared to the Antichrist. He's the first Antichrist in the scriptures, and he's compared to the Antichrist again, and also talks about it in the Chronicles. So I think the most common, easiest to explain on how Nimrod became possibly a Nephilim was that just like Satan is going to possess the Antichrist, Satan possessed him.